Here's what I keep hearing from marketing teams. We need to move faster. We need to ship more. We need AI to do what we do.
And here's what I keep hearing from CMOs. We need to move faster. We need to ship more. We need AI to...
Wait, stop. If everyone's asking the same thing, why does it feel like we're not talking about the same problem?
I'm Diego Lamanto. I'm the CMO at Writer.
I'm Laura Weaver, and I run enterprise content at Writer.
And this season, we're doing something we've never done before.
We're talking to each other.
CMO to team, leadership to practitioner.
Because here's what we realized. When you're a CMO talking to another CMO about AI transformation, you talk about strategy.
But when you're on that team being transformed by that strategy,
you talk about fear.
So this season, we're asking 6 questions that no one is asking out loud.
What responsibility do we have for the systems we build?
How do you transform a team that's afraid of change?
How do you stand out when AI makes infinite mediocrity easy?
How fast is too fast?
What defines your value when AI does what you used to do?
And what are we actually building towards?
These aren't technology questions.
They're people questions.
And every marketer we talk to this season, every single one, is asking them right now.
They just don't know if anyone else is.
This is Humans of AI, Season 5.
Where we're exploring 6 big questions with marketing leaders at global organizations.
Watch the full interviews on YouTube.
Or listen to the Narrative podcast wherever you get your shows.
Because the question isn't whether AI is going to change marketing.
The question is, who are we becoming while it does?
Let's find out. Hi, I'm Laura Weaver, Director of Enterprise Content here at Writer.
And I'm Diego Lamanto. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Writer.
And on this episode of Humans of AI, we are talking to Robert Rose, founder and chief troublemaker at Seventh Bear and one of the founding members of Content Marketing Institute. Diego, why are you excited about talking to Robert?
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to Robert because, Content Marketing Institute has been such an important part of the technology marketing landscape for so many years now. And as those of us who've been around for a while have gone through changes to marketing predicated upon technological changes, right? From, traditional tech to SaaS to now AI, they've been at the forefront of how helping us understand the customer journey and content has played such an important part in that evolution that I'm just a big fan. And so I'm excited to talk to him.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting Robert when I attended the Content Marketing World conference a couple of years ago. But it was just after Writer got Series B funding. And he was so warm and welcoming and congratulatory. It was like so exciting for me as a content marketer to have, somebody who's such an influencer in my industry. I wouldn't have a career without CMI, So having him on is quite an accomplishment for me as a content director. I'm fangirling out here, so I'm very excited to hear the conversation that you two have.
That's great. And, I think the other thing that excites me about that is not just the impact and influence that, he and the organization have had on the industry, but the importance of quality content and experience in the era of AI. I think speaking to someone like him will help us take a step back and think about the experience that we're trying to create around our brand.
Yeah.
And if you look at his research, and I know we're going to get into it when we get into the questions that we ask him, the balance between speed and experience and striking that right balance, I think is a critical thing for marketers to understand right now, because fast doesn't necessarily always mean good.
No.
And, how I feel about slop and your term, infinite mediocrity, and combating that and creating a brand that has real taste and real expression is important. And I think conversations like this will help us frame our minds to do that appropriately.
Well, let's get into the conversation with Robert. And then afterwards, Diego and I will debrief, get into our takeaways and talk about what marketing leaders can do as next steps and insights from this conversation.
So as we launch into this, Robert, nice to meet you. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Writer. So I'm very much appreciative of you doing this and taking part of our conversation. I'm a big fan of the Institute and been following your work. So thanks for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm as As well, I am a longtime fan of the company and certainly have watched you all blossom, and so it's super exciting to be here.
Well, that's so nice of you to say. Well, let's get right into it. Let's just start with a little bit about you. We always like to understand how the folks that we're talking to got into this work. So, what's been, the path, your path to your work as a marketing advisor?
Sure. So, well, as Dr. Evil might say, the story of my life is quite inconsequential. But the short story is basically I've been in marketing for the last 35 years and started in television and then quickly got into digital as the dot com era reared its head. And then was the CMO. And so I appreciate your position very much. I was the CMO of of a startup, a software startup, enterprise software startup
Ah,
from 2002 till about 2008 or nine. And, 2 rounds of Silicon Valley funding and the whole thing. So I've been in those Friday afternoon meetings that are quite uncomfortable and talking about pipeline and all of that.
we do
And
that on
then went,
we do that on Monday, Robert. So it's
yeah,
okay. It's
exactly.
still uncomfortable, but still, but on Mondays.
Yeah. And then went out on my own, because I've been spending my time in content and content strategy, as part of my CMO gig, and sort of it combined both, my general marketing background as well as content strategy. And I met this guy, Joe Pulizzi, who was starting something called the Content Marketing Institute, and I joined him as his partner as chief strategy officer, and he and I grew that thing till 2016 when it was ultimately acquired, and he went off and started writing novels and all of that, and I stayed on and still work for a living and do mostly work with larger brands, global matrix siloed, all the fun, complicated things that global brands bring to the table and help them work through both marketing as well as content strategy challenges. And increasingly, as is the case, that engages more and more with artificial intelligence and how AI is really helping to, drive efficiency, drive effectiveness, get to deeper thinking. And, it's a fascinating wave that we're all riding right about now.
Yeah, I have to say, I thank you and your founders at the CMI for such great guidance during that early SaaS era. The 2010s, like it was indispensable really for us marketers that were trying to figure it out and understand like how is the buyer, the journey changing and content at the center of it. I know I speak for a lot of marketers that say we drew a lot of inspiration and learning from the work you guys did there. So it's been thank you. It's just been a part of my career, like,
It's been a great journey. Yeah,
yeah.
it's been fun. It's, as I've often said, the reason I got into content marketing was because I dislike sales so much, and sort of all I really wanted to do was build cool things, and so content marketing enables me to build cool things for marketing and business, and so that was, it was the perfect job for me.
I love that. I was actually gonna ask as a follow-up here, like, why content marketing? Why was that of the disciplines that, probably specialized on it as a CMO, that was probably your strong suit, I would assume. Why was that the focus for you post, operator?
There was two reasons for it. One is I came out, I mean, my original goal in life when I was a kid was I came out to Los Angeles and I was going to be a rock star and a screenwriter. And that turned out to work as about as well as you think it might. Um, but what I really loved doing was creating entertaining and wonderful things, and that was really my passion. And then, as I got more steeped into the classic, I'm a marketing fanboy, have been a marketing fanboy forever. So, everybody from Phil Kotler to, Peter Drucker and all of the greats out there that were teaching, and specifically Kotler, who his definition of marketing, which was, CCDVTP, right, which is, create and communicate value for a profit. And to me, that was always the purpose of marketing, which was communicating and creating value,
Yeah,
right? Creating value in the thing that you were using to actually drive an audience, a buyer, a loyalty, whatever it was. And it was just that was sort of, to sum that up, it's really about creating good stuff, creating great content. And so that was what attracted me to the practice. And then as it started to work in the 2010s and 2013 and 2014 and 2015 and really took off and, sort of had our fun sort of, frenemies slash co-opetition with, folks like HubSpot and that sort of thing. And we're sort of driving that inbound idea. It was really sort of a wave that was helping and maybe primarily B2B, but really just marketing more broadly as it really started to take off. And now you can even argue, as we sit here in 2026, that content marketing has really become the heart of actual marketing, right?
Yeah. It's a centerpiece of constructing a journey. The content is the centerpiece of it and the hub around which it all functions. And so I think very astute move for you to specialize in it. Let's fast forward to now, and I'm seeing some of the stuff that you've been working on recently. It seems like your thesis now is that marketing teams are drowning in execution, right? So we've gone from stepping back a bit, thinking strategically about the customer journey and re-architecting that journey around experiences. Now, with so much happening with AI and the weight of execution right now, companies and marketers are reacting to the next channel, campaign, the demand for leadership. So your thesis, I think, please correct it if it's wrong, is that you want to shift, you want to help companies shift from reactive high volume approach to marketing teams that compound in value over time, and that agentic AI can help with this transformation. First off, is that correct? And if so, what inspired, you to bring this thesis to life?
It's a great framing of it, and it really comes down to sort of, look, it's been 22 minutes since we've talked about AI, and AI is the thing, right? But it goes even bigger than that. The trend, which is marketing technology, broadly speaking, and you could point to the last 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is, and sort of the evolution of marketing. It used to be back in the day, if you look 2008 and 2005, and, in those, sort of, there was still that distinction between marketing and digital marketing, right? And so what ended up happening is all that conflation took place. And by the time we reached, sort of COVID and even post COVID, most marketing teams had really merged those ideas together to the point where marketing teams are largely video game operators, right? In other words, there's so much technology being placed. And this was a real stat I saw, and I can't find it again, but it was a real stat from real research that I found that today's marketer in a large organization spends 30% of their time either configuring new technology, learning a new technology, or acquiring a new technology. And not spending their time telling stories, reaching out, writing copy, doing the things that are really, sort of the important parts of marketing, and spending so much time just configuring and working with tech. And so that, to me, as we reach into this 2026 tension, and we can all agree that there's tension now with where AI is and sort of the job and the function of marketing, is we're now training people, young people, to come in and be video game operators. And that's the very thing that AI is designed to replace. And so when we sort of have the conversation of AI replacing marketing people, it becomes a sort of, yeah, of course they are, because we're training them to ultimately all they do is push buttons. That's the opportunity we have to shift the conversation.
My son is a freshman in college, and he's studying computer science, and he was home for spring break, and I asked him like, "Hey, you guys talking about AI in school, and how are you thinking about this as far as your grade? I don't want to freak him out, right? Like, how is he thinking about it?" And he said something that I thought was insightful that I've been actually sharing with others. He said, "Look, I'm trying not to learn derivative stuff." He's like, "If it's been done at scale before, it's probably a good candidate for AI to replace it. So I'm trying to learn how to bring new things to the world and use AI to help me do that." I was like, "Holy crap, that's really insightful for a kid."
Yeah,
So
right.
so I think that's something that we can, as far as marketers, can take back is, well, how do you use this sort of in a first principles way to do fundamentally different work instead of just doing more? Because I think that's another principle of yours that I've seen you talk about is it's not just about more, it's about fundamentally different work. So can you talk about
Exactly.
that and your journey to that way of thinking?
Yeah. It's this idea that, look, AI, and this is and this is especially to generative AI, right? I mean, because there's AI is a big topic, and mostly what we focus on in marketing is the Gen AI, side of things. And the interesting thing is that AI is maybe the first technology in 20 years that is quite literally inviting us to slow down, get deeper, become more creative, focus on our craft, and become deeper thinkers. And what are we doing? Our knee jerk reaction is, how does it maybe hack things faster? How does it make me move quicker? How does it help me scale more and create more output? And it's like we're missing the opportunity in so many ways. There's this bumper sticker that's going around now, which is basically, you know, your job's going to get replaced by AI. It's not going to get replaced by AI. It's going to get replaced by someone using AI. And it's like all of those things. And it's like what I've been telling CEOs is like, if you believe that your marketing team can do more with less people. In other words, with less people, you can use AI to sort of backfill those people's tasks. You also have to believe the corollary, which is if you had the same or more people, you could actually do more or better work. You
Right.
have to believe that. I
Yeah.
don't know why we're so eager to choose the former and not eager to choose the latter.
100% agree. And I mean, we won't get we won't get deep into like historical comparables, but I'm a techno optimist, and I've studied a lot of the previous historical movements. And time again, organizations or society reshapes itself around the technology, and you end up needing more people to do different things. So you should be ahead of that, right? As opposed to just thinking reductively.
Absolutely, and it's proving itself to be the case, right? What we're finding is that in the real use cases, like the people who put in Writer, the companies that I've seen put in enterprise solutions like yours, they actually are doing really interesting things. There's more people involved and there's just different skill sets involved and there's different activities involved. But the ones who are getting the most out of it are actually not firing people in order to let the AI do its thing. They're actually using AI to scale and augment the talent that the people already have for the, core things. To your son's point, when young people are asking me, like, what do I do? Because the world is telling me I got to go get good at AI. And I'm like, no, go get good at the thing you want to get good at. Like, go
Yeah.
get good at strategy, go get good at storytelling, go get good at writing, go get good at, music, go get good at photography so that you understand how AI helps you be better.
Right, and use it develop that skill and use AI as a tool in the embarking on the journey to
Because if you can't recognize what good looks like, there's no sense AI will provide zero value to you.
totally. Okay, well, there's a third category here that I wanna talk about is AI theater, because 'cause I've heard you talk about this too. I mean, first of all, if you can define what AI theater is, what does that look like in marketing departments, and how do you avoid that trap of just putting AI theater on for show?
Yeah, there's two elements to it. I mean, we talked about one, which is the CEOs that are now sort of using AI as an excuse, right? Where they're laying off parts of their team because they overhired during COVID or they did something foolish, and now they're laying off people. And what they're doing, and we just did recent research at Content Marketing Institute that actually showed the data showed that most of those layoffs that are happening in marketing right now are not happening because of AI, because what's happening is they're not backfilling, what they're doing is they're just adding more tasks to the smaller team's plate. That leads us to the AI theater that I think you're really getting at, which is in so many cases what I find is you've got senior leadership, which may come from HR or may come from any other place in the sort of senior, levels of the company, which send around your sort of 365 review or whatever employee review you're going to get. And one of the new check boxes is tell us how AI has actually helped you become more
Yeah,
because they're trying to get a narrative that AI helps.
right,
And it's like, sure, uh, I used Copilot to write a blog post, check, right? And it's like they're not actually doing anything useful. They're just doing more activities and sort of experimentation with all of this stuff. And there's not really adding any more value. They're just adding more thrash to their day.
right. So, I guess that begs us as leaders, the CMOs, to set the right framing then for the organization. If we're the conduit between the CEO and the board asking about AI transformation, and we're not pushing back and pushing, battling against theater, how can we expect our teams to do that?
That's exactly right. And if you don't understand the process, right? So this is where I get on my soapbox about content strategy and marketing operations and true understanding, transparency and workflow and governance and how you actually manage your organization, which if you ask most CMOs, they have no idea, right?
Yeah,
Even to the CMO, marketing is a black box where ideas go in and out the other side comes something that they hope is good and they don't really understand the workflow. So it's like, well, how can you expect a tool like AI to actually improve the process of your operations if you don't understand the operation?
so how do you tell the difference then between a genuine transformation and just slapping AI onto an existing process?
It's the same way that you would really determine it with any technology that you're putting in, right? This goes back, in our you and we have history, right? We've lived through some of this before, which is if you go back and you look at early implementations of enterprise email or enterprise content management or enterprise analytics or enterprise personalization or really any enterprise level technology where there's going to be a layer, right? There's an entire layer of technology helping govern some sort of process to give it scale, effectiveness, and efficiency. That's enterprise technology in a nutshell. And so when you say, okay, that's how we're approaching this AI question, right? We're looking at it as a layer to provide better scale, better efficiency, or better effectiveness, or all of the above.
Right.
And then you understand the process to such a degree that you know where the gaps are. In other words, when you go out and do the tiger team or the experimentation team or whatever team is going to sort of take on, the AI committee or the council or whatever it's going to be called in your organization, if their goal is to sort of run off into a little lab and just do a bunch of experiments and then come back and and show you the results of their experiment, that can be terribly productive. But if their goal, if their operation is basically to look at the operation, find where there are existing bottlenecks, existing gaps, opportunities for effectiveness or efficiency, and start to apply the use cases in those places with that layer, now all of a sudden you're starting to prove out any, use case where it might be efficient, it might be more effective, it might be both. And so it's really taking that true enterprise approach to it and integrating that into your operation in a way that most companies just simply don't take the time to do.
That makes sense. And let's take it from the internal to the external now.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's some ways that we as internal practitioners are driving our teams and leading our teams to be more productive. But then on the flip side, let's talk about the experience for the customer.
Yeah.
You created the audience trust index. Let's start
Yes.
there. What is that and what inspired you to create it?
We have long tried to figure out how to measure. I mean, look, we've long tried to figure out how to measure marketing full stop, right? So I would argue that performance marketing, we've got a pretty good sense of now, right? So measuring performance of campaigns and those kinds of things, we've got it. Content marketing has always struggled, right? Because what you're trying to do with content marketing is ultimately measure the depth of a relationship.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we've tried various ways to do that in B2B and B2C through downloading of content, through interaction, through vague words like engagement, and those kinds of things. And so ultimately, however, when you start looking at it, it's about are we developing a deeper trust on the things that we want to talk about, right? Whether that's our brand, whether that's our point of view on the world, or whatever it is, are we developing deeper trust with an audience? And so what I wanted to do was really take advantage of if there's one thing that AI is immensely powerful at doing, it's identifying patterns and doing semantic analysis that goes beyond sort of just general semantic connection, right? That's what AI is really good at. So in 2016 and 2017 and 2015, we had sentiment analysis and all of that, and it was generally pretty weak because it was basically thumbs up or thumbs down. Did you get value out of this content or not? Yes, no, vote, get that sort of thing. But now we can use AI and in sort of building this little framework, I actually went out and built a little app using AI to do it. And basically, we can go out and look at the Reddit threads and the LinkedIn and social media experiences and our own owned media, whether it's a blog or whether it's email or all of the different corpuses of content and conversation that we have. And we can start letting AI sort of help us understand the insights around how are things resonating, are they actually advocating on our behalf? Are they actually believing what it is we say? Are they getting use out of it? And start to develop a bit of a depth of trust and relationship with our audiences that we heretofore just haven't had. And I think that's a great use case for AI in terms of understanding the sentiment of what's going on in our trust. It's definitely a work in progress for sure. Let me be clear. But I think there are true opportunities to use AI to understand our relationships better, and we can do that now at some level of scale.
And I think it's even more important in the age of AI because, as you were saying, performance marketers have gotten good at measuring impact of act,
Transactions, yeah,
but that's actually like just as we were getting really good at it, here comes AI and chatbots, and it becomes once again a black box to some degree because we used to be able to say, I spend money here, I promote these messages and I get this response and this reaction and this outcome.
Yeah.
Now we don't actually, we're losing that again. If you look at the data, it's, direct traffic is increasing hugely and search and paid traffic is decreasing correspondingly, right? So now we're
Yeah.
getting direct traffic. We don't know where they're coming from. We presume they're coming from chat engines and whatnot, but we don't know what experience they had when they engaged with our brand. And so understanding where you stand in the trust paradigm is even more important now because so much of your traffic is going to come from sources that you can't measure like we started to get good at. Isn't that fair?
Yeah, 100% fair. And the implication of that is, so even if you look, let's do pre-COVID as sort of the sort of dividing line, although it's probably a lot fuzzier than that. But if you looked at that and the importance of owned media in our ecosystem or our portfolio of marketing was really high, right? We all needed blogs, we needed a resource center, because we needed to be able to measure our ability to create an audience. And increasingly, because of exactly what you just outlined, so much of our content strategy now depends on getting out on third party media, right? In other words, getting our depth of thought leadership out on LinkedIn, getting into Slack groups, getting into Reddit, getting on YouTube so that we become part of the AI, sort of system. If inbound from 2008 to, let's call it 2018, just to draw a line, if that was all about being found, right? The idea was be found. Well, now it is be cited, right?
Yeah,
Be the one that they quote, be the one that is in the answer. And the key there is to be part of the answer so that your answer is so interesting that the audience then goes, I want to go find out who said that, right? I'm going to go search them out. So when they do hit your website because they've sought you out because of the answer that you gave and that was cited in the AI engine, now they're coming with intent, right? They're coming with intent to learn more about who you are, either the thought leader or as a purchaser of the thing or a provider of whatever. That's the key now because you're not going to get that click, that you're not going to get that sort of immediate, sort of dopamine hit of somebody clicking on your ad or your LinkedIn post or whatever. But if they're seeking you out, well, that's a higher quality idea.
that's right. And they chose to engage with your brand from that experience that they had that you didn't control so much. So influencing that is super important.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your take? I posted about this on LinkedIn a couple days ago. The question of using AI in marketing. And one, should people internally tell you that they use AI to create stuff? Like, do we need like, how important is it to be transparent about that? And then externally, how important is it to be transparent about how you're using AI? I'm curious your thought on that in relation to the trust question.
I have kind of I'm developing. This is not a conviction statement, right? So this is still a work in progress for me in terms of conviction. But what I'm developing is an opinion that says no, it doesn't matter. And here's the reason I'm saying that these days. And I'll use the external as sort of the example here, right? Which is we're getting to a point now where you don't know, right? You can't tell. Of course, there are the tells that are there, right? Which is yes, justice for M dash, as Anne Hanley might say, right? And also, of course, the if this, not that, sort of, classic cliche, all the cliches of AI writing. We're getting, as humans, we're getting pretty good at sniffing some of that stuff out. But more and more, the AI is getting better at writing better, right? Just from a pure writing. Imagery, same thing. You know, I think video has a long way to go, but but it'll also get there, and certainly, in a disturbing way, maybe getting there faster than we like when it comes to deep fakes and those sorts of things. Having said all that, you start to get to have, the classic sort of philosophical question of how many grains of sand until you have a pile, right? In other words, how much AI do I need to use or not use until I have to disclose it? And to me, it's right now it's along two binary situations. Like, we're pure, organic, free, farm raised content, that absolutely never uses AI, and we virtue signal that on our websites and all that kind of stuff. Or we use AI all the time, and we're going to tell you we use AI all the time. And then there's the middle stuff. There's the middle ground. And if you're anywhere in the middle of those two things, I think it's kind of pointless. It's just kind of because we're getting to a point now where it's like All I ask for as a consumer of content is that you don't show me plumbing.
Yeah.
And that means if you're I don't want to see the plumbing. And if you're a human, I don't want to see the plumbing. Like if you're a bad writer and a human and you don't write very well, I'm going to sniff that out and not be interested in your content. If you're using AI and you use all the cliches that AI provides, I'm not going to be terribly interested in that content either. But as long as you're not showing me plumbing, I kind of don't care how you got there because if it's valuable as a consumer. And value is for all content, value is created at the consumer, not at the creator. Now, we can have an argument and a great glass of whiskey over enrichment. Like, are you enriched by using AI or are you not enriched by using AI as a creator? In other words, are you cheating yourself by basically using AI to create stuff versus not? That's a different question than are we providing value? And the enrichment one is over a glass of whiskey and where I still sort of I vacillate back and forth on that kind of stuff because I do think it's important to have the friction of learning the thing you're talking about. But that's a classic problem that we've had forever. Does our CEO really know our product or does he just get on stage and give a script that the marketing people gave him? That's the same question that we have to ask everything.
I'm also curious your thoughts then on what advice do you give to content marketers in terms of how to adopt this, leverage it, use it? Going back to the conversation I had with my son, trying to help him think through his future. What are you seeing, hearing, and what are you advising?
The key is to accept the invitation that we talked about, a few minutes ago, right? Accept the invitation that AI is giving you, which is to, the way I use AI, for example, is, the bumper stickery way for me to say it is to everything that AI comes back at me with has a question mark behind it, right? In other words, it's there to help me wrestle with the problem harder and to understand things in a more creative way. And I use the very tactical example, like I write a column every week for CMI, and my column used to take anywhere between 2 hours to an hour, 2.5 hours if I was, particularly starved for the muse and all that kind of stuff to write every week. Now it takes me probably 4 to 6 hours to write. So it's actually less efficient now, but I use AI to pressure test my thinking, argue. I have a whole custom AI that I call the argument room, which is where I go in and have it basically say, assume I'm wrong about this and give me every argument against it. And I sit there and fight and press and look at the research and go look at stuff and verify things. And hopefully my stuff is better because of it. It's certainly, I'm more proud of it because I've used AI, but I'm using AI to make me better at the thing that I want to be better at, understand the thing I want to be more depth, have more depth in, rather than using it to help me create something faster.
It's funny. I love the argument. What do you call it? The argument room?
The argument, it's a classic Monty Python, right? Do you
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
Monty
Right.
Python, the argument? Yeah, the argument office? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's perfect. I saw it. Karpathy, who's one of the original programmers, developers of LLMs at OpenAI in the early days. He just literally tweeted. He wrote a blog post. He asked an LLM to rate it, and then he asked it to look at it and make the counterpoint. And it was so good. He does that because it's sycophantic a little bit, and it wants to please you, and it can make such a good argument for what you're bringing it originally. He asked it to give the opposite, and it actually convinced him the opposite way. He doesn't want to publish the blog post anymore. It actually changed his mind. So
Yeah,
LMs are so good at being convincing and taking a tonality and turning that into very effective language that's convincing. Like it's very, very convincing that you have to really guard against. Is the premise correct? Is it convincing you on a faulty premise with great evidence and mechanisms that hook your brain to accept the arguments? But what about the premise in general? And I find that that is something that we have to get better at using AI to do to test our premises.
exactly. And the funny thing is that, I enjoy, from an emotional standpoint, I have trained the AIs that I use to sort of not be so sycophantic. I mean, there's, it's like, it's like, that's a sharp take, Robert, and, all of that kind of stuff, which is there, of course. And I've put in instructions and all that to not be that, but I do enjoy it that it's pleasant to speak with, right? For
Right,
the most part, for my
right.
daily chats and for the things that I'm searching for and the things that I'm asking for how to's. I don't need it to be I don't need it to argue with me when I'm asking how do I configure WordPress to do something, right? It's like that's why I call it an argument room because I've actually created a separate project where I go in for that specific purpose to have an argument, right?
I love that. Great way to strengthen the content in general.
I don't need the hassle, right? I don't want it to hassle me every time I want,
Yeah,
I'm trying to,
right.
get directions to how to cook a cake or something.
Why WordPress? Have you thought about HubSpot, right? Like,
Yeah,
no, no.
exactly, right, exactly. I don't wanna say like, "Hey, I'm trying to configure this plugin on WordPress," and go, "Oh, come on now, you don't need to do that," you
Yeah.
know?
No, this is what we want. All right. So I love the fact that you're friction generating your strategy to introduce friction into the process, which reminds me of your latest book is called Valuable Friction. And
"Hey, aren't you sweet?"
well, I'm a big proponent of introducing friction into a process, as we were just talking about. And I believe the focus of your book is to help teams slow down enough to see clearly and separate signal from the noise. Can you walk me through the moment that you decided that like this was this is the story you wanted to tell, and that slowing down was actually the best way to move forward?
Yeah, and it's and to sort of run the headline is that it's less about slowing down than it is about understanding the difference between slow and agile or speed and agility. And so what really got me was it was a question I was continuing to have with clients around speed really over the last 15 years. And this gets back to the very beginning of our conversation where it's not just AI, it's technology, generally speaking, has really given us and wrapped us around the axle of speed as the foundational, value that we can provide, right? We even give it mantras, right? We have the whole move fast and break things and just ship it and, fail fast. And what I would end up doing is I would have these conversations with clients where they would come in and we would talk about, we got to move faster. We got to move faster, 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 faster. We have to iterate faster. We have to go faster. And my first question out of my mouth to those CMOs was, how fast is fast enough?
Yeah.
Like, how will you know that you're moving fast enough? And the question, and then it sort of got into there are so many things that technology has mindlessly and mindfully given us that we just didn't put any thought into. And the sort of banal example that I used there was the skip the intro button, which was, invented in 2017 by Netflix, who noticed through their data and their analytics and all the things that they were doing that people were skipping the first 5 minutes of a show to get right to the content faster. And they thought, oh, and it was 15%, by the way, 15% of people. So for them, 15% meant critical mass. So let's develop a feature, right? Let's move fast and develop a feature. And they developed the skip the intro button. And so you go, you cut to 2026 and you go, well, why are showrunners and producers of shows still doing lush, beautiful musical themes with Easter eggs in the introduction and sort of introducing the tone? And it's because as creators, as producers of the content, they care about it. They care about the artistry. They care about that content. They want you to listen to that. And so they want to thank the people that are on the show. They want to introduce the mood. They want to put you in the right frame of mind for the episode you're about to watch. That's why they do it. And so you ask yourself this completely banal thing that we now sort of just take for granted, right? Are we better humans because we can skip the intro button? And I use it because it's so banal, right? It's like, well, of course, let's skip the end. It's so stupid. It's like, yeah, but think about it for a second. Like, I have these sense memories of shows like Star Trek and, the early Warner Brothers cartoons and stuff that I grew up with as a kid, where those theme songs now are they're etched, not just for the show, but for life stages of my life that I actually associate with those things. Whenever I hear that, I associate with that with a wonderful time in my life and we're losing that. And it's not the actual fact that we're losing skip the intro or the intro itself. It's that we don't put any thought into it. So if you extrapolate that out to everything that we're doing, from the way we design UI to the way that we design our lives to the way that we actually live our lives with technology, all I wanted to do was say, let's understand where we insert friction to maybe add a little more value to our life.
I really appreciate that perspective because as you're describing, the impact of the skip intro button, and I think about my own experiences watching stuff, it just feels like if you're not careful, speed could drive your product to more disposability.
Yes.
If you're just focused on getting people to the one piece that is very useful, and you don't craft a full experience along the way, you can become disposable.
That's right. And you sand down all of the differentiated edges as well.
And it's funny, just to on that note, I'm doing a Sopranos rewatch right now. I haven't watched it in 20 years.
Okay.
It's amazing. And my wife always wants to skip past the intro. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, this is the best opening of all time."
It totally puts you in the mood, right?
Totally. I feel like all of a sudden I am in central Jersey. I've gone through the bridge and
Totally.
I've seen
And
the
even if you get up and get a drink while it's starting to happen, or you just sort of settle into the couch or whatever, it's like it's setting a mood, right? Instead
hear
of
that
just jumping
music.
in. Yeah.
Woke up this morning, like, all of a sudden, I am in The Sopranos,
That's right. Yeah.
and as opposed to just hitting the button and then all of a sudden seeing Tony, right? There's something to that. So I love that, introducing the friction to create that fuller experience. Let's get to, like, making the argument, though. How does a CMO justify slowing down? Like, how do you quantify? How do you justify it when we're being pushed for speed, and maybe the people pushing us don't have the appreciation that we may have.
It could be hard because the pressure is there, right? So, and so the subtitle of my book is How to Differentiate Yourself in a World Obsessed with Speed. And so it really is ultimately the argument for why to do it is differentiation today. And increasingly, because of the seamlessness of which we can produce content, AI being a big contributor to that, of course, the wall of noise is even higher and more beige than it's ever been. And so how do you differentiate in that world? You have to sort of, as I very technically put, you got to sort of let your pointy bits show, right? You got to you have to let your personality through. You have to let your humanness, and there's all kinds of ways that people are talking about that, from purposely introducing errors to, weird punctuation and, all kinds of things that are starting to be tried. But ultimately it gets to, so Rick Rubin, of course, is being quoted much these days in terms of this idea, but his favorite quote that I actually have in the book, my favorite quote of his from his book is where he says, when the work has 5 mistakes, it's not ready yet. But when it has 8 mistakes, it might be.
Yeah.
And it's knowing that, Ben Affleck is very famous for, his quote where he says, that a craftsman, he compares AI to being a craftsman, where he says a craftsman knows how to build the thing and an artist knows when to stop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That idea is valuable friction, right? It's like knowing when to stop is valuable friction. And the stopping may not be until the fourth iteration of something, or it may be after the first. That's agility, not speed, right? So thinking about that from a CMO's perspective, it's how are you making decisions, strategic decisions about what it is you're producing, what campaigns you're running, or are you just operating from move as fast as possible? The whole kiss cam and the Coldplay thing, where the PR strategy was how do we move and get a message out as fast as possible? And then basically it sort of fell on its face and was sort of like, ew, that's kind of icky that you actually did that. And then hired Gwyneth Paltrow to do the thing. It's like, that wasn't the most friction filled decision sort of that you could have made there. Did you win the moment? Yes. Did you lose the war? Maybe.
So I think one of the things that comes to mind when I hear you describe the role of the CMO here is you are the guardian of taste,
Exactly. That's exactly, yeah, that's
right?
exactly it.
And that's the argument I would and do make often when, and you can ask my team. I like to take a step back and think, why are we doing this? What are the outcomes we're trying to get at? What's unique? What's special about this? If we're all just moving fast without taste, we're all just moving fast. And what's the point of engaging with you? So we, as marketing leaders, have to be protectors and bring taste to the thing that our teams are doing. And sometimes you can't do that without slowing down. So
Yeah,
that's,
100%, 100%. Guardians of taste is such a great way to describe what a CMO is these days.
yeah. What have you seen with results from the folks who are adopting the plan here?
It's a little hard to put your finger on it, right? Because it's one of those things where it's gonna come out, you know, qualitatively rather than quantitatively in most cases, right? Where it's Are we producing better work? Are we creating more trust? Are we actually, having more effective retention of our teams? Are we hiring better people? All those things will sort of, work itself out. But where I am seeing results sort of from an approach like this are just better places to work, better results, generally speaking, smarter teams that are actually building investment value, right? Where the team is actually increasing in value rather than becoming a commodity and a bunch of button pushers, right? Where the team is truly a differentiation within the marketing organization and not just a commoditized set of technology managers. It's something that has become really lost, I think, in many, and this again is especially true in B2B. When I was growing up through marketing in, sort of the late 90s and early 2000s and in B2B organizations, we became entrenched in our businesses from a subject matter expertise perspective. Like we knew the industry, we knew the competitors, we knew the where the industry was going, and if we didn't, we were taught. Right? We had people in the organization that took the time to actually teach us, to have us understand the industry, to truly be able to operate at any level like a subject matter expert in the business we were in. And today, and this is a perfect example. I literally had a conversation with a director of marketing at a technology company lately, and I said, "Hey, tell me about your." I needed to learn about their business, which in this case was actually cybersecurity in this particular case. And I said, "Tell me about your business. Tell me about your competitors. Tell me where the industry is right now." And this director of marketing at this organization was like, "I don't know anything about it. Like, I don't know anything about this industry. All I do is I run HubSpot for them." And it's like, okay, that's not good, right? That's not good for your job security, nor is it good for the business for you to not understand. And the sad thing was he had no interest in it. He had no interest in the cybersecurity. He had no interest in that. And it's like
Right.
that that means you're replaceable
Yeah.
tomorrow. But it also means you're not building any true institutional value for your team because you're just a cog that can be replaced.
There's just no craft there, right? It's just a skill. It's just a technical execution.
That's right. And in many ways, and this goes back to our conversation about university in so many ways, the universities in marketing, have in many ways turned into a trade school, right? And
Right.
we are turning university and marketing into, well, they're Salesforce certified and they're HubSpot certified and they're Google certified, so great, they can go get a job configuring those technologies. And then you come out and they go, oh, agentic AI can now do all that stuff that I just got certified in.
Right. Once again, no differentiation there. You have to bring craft and taste and, real thought, and story into what you're doing at every level. I love to
Exactly.
express that to my team. All
Exactly.
right, Robert, what's next for you from here? What are you working on, and what are you excited about?
So my business has changed really in the last couple of years here. I'm doing more and more sort of fractional work. I hate that word so much, fractional, but I'm doing more marketing guidance for companies, and so it's really moved beyond content strategy in so many ways to sort of broader levels of marketing and storytelling and AI and all those things. I forgot how much I missed that general marketing work. I really did. So I'm so enjoying working with my clients now. So I've got a nice roster of clients that I'm working with. And then the second thing is that I'm always writing. I love to write. It's my favorite thing to do. I've got my column, and of course I'm working with the American Marketing Association. So I'm their instructor for content marketing strategy. So every year we do a refresh of our certification course. So I'm working a bit on that, and of course all the work that I'm doing with Content Marketing Institute, sort of out there evangelizing the practice of content marketing and getting people interested.
Wonderful. All right, Robert, it is time for our rapid fire questions.
Oh, okay.
So,
All
all
right.
right, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Here we go. What is one marketing skill that you think becomes more valuable because of AI, not less?
Writing.
Right. Okay. Love that. If you could only automate one thing on a marketing team right now, what would that be?
One thing I could automate.
If we could only automate one thing of everything that we have, that in front of us, what would be that one thing that we should automate?
Oh, boy, that's a great one. I would say content calendaring.
Mm, okay. Why?
Because right now it is one of those things where it's a little bit like CRM. Everybody wants to do it, but nobody does it. And,
Yeah.
metadata is another one, right? Metadata here. I'm going to change my answer. Metadata,
Okay.
adding metadata to our content because it's the one thing that everybody wants to do, but then nobody ever takes the time to really do. So, getting a great metadata schema and automating that as you create your content.
I love both of those. So I think we'll let both of them stand. Okay. And then last, what is one piece of marketing advice that you used to swear by that AI has completely changed your mind about?
That appearance doesn't matter, quality doesn't matter, and that means imagery, video, as well as writing. So, writing from the plumbing standpoint, imagery from the quality standpoint. We often say that this is the dumbest AI you're ever going to use,
Yeah.
and sort of it gets to the point, but it's also the dumbest version of us that have ever existed, and so we're getting pretty good at like you can tell if something is an AI generated image. You can tell if it's AI generated video. And so quality where you used to say, oh, just use an iPhone and shoot a video, or just use iPhones and that used to be sort of like, yeah, you just get it out there. No, quality and production and audio quality and all of that stuff matters, really matters.
And I think that ties very nicely into everything we just talked about today. So, Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed this conversation, all your insights and illumination around everything that we just talked about. It's been a pleasure. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
I just want to walk through how Robert's way of thinking aligns with your leadership as a CMO and the way that you think about marketing. We talk through in our team about these pillars of AI native marketing. And we talk about how productivity is the floor. And it's so aligned with what Robert was saying about speed. Speed is a given now. It's not a sign of excellence or success anymore.
100%. I totally am aligned with his mindset. Speed and scale enable you to actually drive more capacity into the things that actually move the business and make a difference. At the first, level of that is actually investing in visibility. We talked about it as part of the conversation, and how do you ensure that your brand is visible in a way that's trustworthy, right? That really represents your brand and the way that you want to be seen out there. It's two dimensions. It's actually getting out there, and then it's getting out there in a way that's meaningful. And so getting things done faster is the table stakes that enables that. And then investing in your brand and investing in driving a human led but AI assisted creative. I think that's the key there to driving that visibility into experiences with your brand that matter, and then just giving you the bandwidth to be always on and drive, a constant drumbeat of experience at the moment that matters with more of the audience than you could ever reach before. Speed and scale makes that all happen, but how you do that is what really matters, and I think that's what I one of the things I took away from my conversation there with Robert.
Something that occurred to me, content marketers, especially people who have got their chops as writers, are often seen by other marketers and businessy types as kind of precious about the quality of our work, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
why is this taking so long? Or does it really need to be this way? And I appreciate that Robert pointed out that now more than ever, we've been singing to this gospel for a long time. And it feels like AI brings that all into perspective that the commodity content, that infinite mediocrity, it's inevitable now with people having AI tools that you have no choice but to lean more into and invest more into the differentiation. And I thought it was also interesting that he sees trust as like so intermingled with differentiation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought the idea of taste was I really enjoyed that part of the conversation because if you can't point at how is your taste influencing the output, I think you have a problem. I think you have a slop problem, you have a
Hmm.
mediocrity problem, and you have a replaceability problem because if your taste does not make its way through how your team is working and what your organization is presenting to the world, I think you're going to be lost in a sea of sameness. So that really resonated with me, and it was a good reminder. His thesis of slowing down. I think it's spot on. I think we have to do more of that. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah. We didn't really dig deep into this with Robert, but he did kind of do a call out, which was, if you could automate one thing on your team, it would be content calendaring and metadata, which is we do both on our team. So we've established, yes, quality and differentiation are worth leaning into and investing in. How do you justify the operating model shift behind that? How do you turn that into a process that you, as my boss, or maybe our demand gen team, says, okay, we'll build in the time for your content team to develop the quality and taste standards around this?
I think it has to come from the top. If your CMO is not supporting the quality, no one else will. They're
Mhm.
just they're too busy and they just need that piece of content from you. And so, unless it's the tone is set from the top, like there's visible examples of a leader stopping the team and saying, this isn't quality enough, or we're not putting this out, no one will raise that bar. No one will. They're just too busy. So, we have to, as leaders, force that and make the team know that there's always time for making it better. Not over indexing, not, continually, but there's time to make it quality. And if it's not quality, it's not worth publishing.
And to be fair, and this isn't an ad for working at Writer, but as a content leader, I have had that experience with you and with Andrew, for example, who's the head of our demand gen team, of saying, hey, the deadline here isn't as important as making sure that we are creating a really insightful, valuable experience for our audience.
Yeah.
So thanks, boss. Uh,
Yeah.
and then we build the automation around that, right? So once we've crafted and built that, determined what that quality of experience is going to be, then you automate around that process.
I think we've all just had enough experience to know that it doesn't matter if you hit the deadline if it's not good work. Not that it's not good work, but if it's not, it doesn't have a differentiation, or if it doesn't have some spark to it, like it just doesn't matter. The deadline is no one remembers the deadline. Everyone remembers the quality and the outcome, right?
Nobody's
So
asking, where's that webinar
yeah,
we wanted to sign
right.
up for?
But they're remembering the great ones, right?
Yes.
I
Hmm.
always try to, teach people and express that. It's like they're not gonna remember, they're gonna not gonna I'm not advocating a team. I'm not advocating for us to start missing deadlines willy-nilly. That's not the point here. But no one remembers you were a day late or you did something a day or two later. It's not a free card to always be late, but it is a card to pause for quality.
Yeah.
Slow down as well, right? That's the whole thesis, so there
Right.
you go.
Slow down to speed up. So the tough question, I guess, is when you are dealing with a situation where you're on a hard timeline and you're saying, okay, this is our standard and we have the resources to get here right now.
Yeah,
What's the conversation that we need to have with our CMOs to say this is what we need to get here?
it's baking in the time to do it right. I'll accept us pushing a deadline once or twice, as we're calibrating and learning how to work together, but we can't consistently do that. So it's putting in the right process that leads up to the final date because we can't keep pulling this card. So it's making sure that we have the right review cycles, we do it right, you get the attention of the people that need to pay attention to it. You're really good at this, Alora, of getting something to me when with clear timelines and, I make sure to bake my time in. You don't wait till the day before, you give it to me 2, 3 days, like, that's upon the content creators as well to bake that in. Don't wait till the last minute to ask for approval.
And, that's a skill that I learned through agency client management, which a lot of folks in corporate marketing didn't get.
Yeah, that's bad.
And I think that's an important skill to build up, whether or not you're treating your leaders as your clients
That's right.
ultimately.
Yep.
So,
We appreciate that too. I honestly, we really appreciate that. Give us like clear clarity on what you're asking for and when you're asking for it, and then be persistent. Like we can't,
mhm.
we admire it. So that's a
And
good
to
thing.
bring AI into this, Diego, that's a really good use case for AI too, is like how to communicate. your feedback needs with your leadership, for example, how to package something in a clear way and deliver it to the folks that are going to be reviewing the content and getting feedback on it. I've transparently done that with you several times.
Yes.
Uh, is there anything else that really stood out to you in this conversation with Robert, or something that you never thought about before and are now thinking about in a new way after talking with him?
I loved his example of the skip intro button and how
Yes.
ubiquitous that has become. It really has, and I'm guilty of pressing it all the time too, but I find myself feeling bad about it often. Like, as I described, like, I make sure, like, for The Sopranos, I don't do it. I want the full
Right.
experience. But, like, I feel bad when I watch Severance and I hit the skip intro button because it's such a it's such a great intro,
It
and it's
is a great
part of the
intro.
story. So I found that really interesting that that was we're so quick to pick it, you know? So I'm left thinking, well, can't count on everyone not hitting skip intro. So what do you do as a creator to work around that? How do you work around that? That's a question to unlock. We're too hardwired to move fast. So I don't know the answer to that, but that's something I'm gonna be thinking about.
I'm gonna check out his book because I've got homework to do. And also, I love this theory of using friction to build value, right? When I first started working for Writer, I kind of had this prediction that as AI got more widely adopted, evidence of like handcrafted, human crafted, homespun products were going to gain in value. And I think the same thing has to do, if we're talking about B2B content, for example, evidence of, oh, this was very carefully curated, very thoughtfully made is going to just increase that value exponentially. And when you have little Easter eggs like that, little asides to the audience of, hey, I know you want to hit that intro button, but you're not
Yeah.
gonna because we're going to give you a beautiful experience, then you can't build a better relationship between a brand and an audience.
Yeah, and I think, we've talked about this before in other forums, but we here at Writer make, more investment in, field activities and
Yes.
events and experiences than most companies at our size and scale do. And that's because of the desire to bring taste to the experience, right? And be differentiated and feel like something that's crafted more than just produced. And that's always top of mind. So in talking to him, I felt like, okay, we have some taste. We have a little bit of we do that. And it illuminated part of the reason why we do that, I think.
If anything, we have to articulate that even more
Yeah.
in our work as a marketing team.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Agree.
is there a suave way of getting us out of this conversation at this point? Is there, or no, are we being really human right now and people like, "Oh yeah, I can relate to this."
I think the I think the suave way is to say it's been a pleasure, Alora. Really enjoyed the conversation with Robert and wrapping up here with you today.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, Diego. Take care.